Hi, my name is Katie Parmalee. I'm the team leader for the 3D AI Biosensors team for the Northeastern University College of Professional Studies International Field Study Experience. Our team, including myself, Angela Bacoli, Garrett Box, and Kenzie Langton, is presenting today our SWOT analysis of biosensor deployment in the USA, Canada, and the UK for our project sponsor, Will Watts.
Poultry production across the globe represents a powerful opportunity for technological innovation. Many states have stagnant regulatory environments that have allowed poultry producers to maintain consistency in their recording and production processes for years, making them prime targets for innovation. Diseases, such as salmonella, remain constant within the poultry production process as a hidden threat, making monitoring of that and other contaminants like residue levels a priority for state health officials. This project focus was on the emerging avenues in the market of poultry production as the next environment for 3D and AI biosensor technology, and where it may be best applied to improve the poultry production process. These improvements could dramatically affect the safety, efficiency, and transparency of the poultry food supply chain, which has been challenged by emergent diseases, maximum level limits, and a patchwork of divergent global policy. In my analysis of the poultry production and agricultural data regulatory environments across numerous states, several strengths relative to the product presented themselves as market opportunities. Within the poultry production regulatory makeup, poultry producers, particularly those of medium and large scale, face incoming waves of legislation. And the U.S. legislative movement is present in the Food Safety Monitoring Act and proposed new USDA frameworks that show producers their current biometric data analysis and keeping may not be enough to keep up with new rigorous data demands. Additionally, movement across the UK and Canada in food trader trusts and minimum residue levels of antibiotics bring new metrics to be measured and stored, opportunities for which the biosensor technology may well serve. Each state also implicates that these organizations need to maintain this level of biometric analysis and detailed record keeping to relay to a designated state official, in the UK, for example, the designated state veterinary official, on a bird-by-bird basis, making the biosensor a strong technology for companies looking to expand their production capacity without sacrificing time or effort on analysis. In the agricultural data regulatory environment, poultry production companies can show their willingness to comply with the public interest without sacrificing their trade secrets thanks to protections within each state. In the UK, for example, agricultural data stored by the biosensor and AI product in the supply chain process can be anonymized if its release could potentially threaten commercial interests. Keeping intricate records can also foster goodwill and participation of data trusts or in reporting data to the USDA to further research while remaining anonymous. The biosensors will be immensely helpful if they can register particularly important biometric information such as contaminant levels of diseases like salmonella or antibiotic residue limits, given recent government interest in monitoring these facets of the production process against many agricultural goods. Earlier adoption of the processing technology will be a wise step for the companies that see the movement of the upcoming legislative environment as a sign of progress or as a need for impending adaptation.
Hi, my name is Kenzie Langton, and I am presenting my team's findings for weaknesses in our SWOT analysis. Starting with the UK, from the United Kingdom's perspective, a weakness for the biosensor technology is the poultry regulatory market, is the amount of data points that have regulated amounts. For the biosensor technology, a struggle will be observing or recording a variety of different data points to state veterinary standards, as opposed to observing a single data point like temperature, antibiotic levels, or contaminants. Agricultural data standards within the UK also present a challenge for poultry producers due to the influence of public interest. If a contaminant is found or a critical event is detected, trade secret agricultural data may not be subject to anonymization, which is decided on by the opinion of the Secretary of State. Now for the US, from the United States perspective, because there hasn't been much change in the poultry regulatory environment, a weakness for the biosensor technology lies in the age of large poultry production companies. Some may already have adaptive or definite technology and strategies that make adapting to new technology seem more of a challenge than a positive change to implement. Also, the U.S. government currently has a biosensor patent that is to detect food illness-causing bacteria. This could cause setbacks for the government and agriculture departments to agree to take on this technology when their interest is already in the bacteriophage-based electrochemical biosensor. This is to promote government-led research. The government also has the U.S. Federal Open Data Policy, which encourages the public to be aware of issues and have opinions. Policies like the Agriculture Data Act of 2018, Memorandum on Transparency and Open Government, the Open Government Directive, Digital Government Building, 21st Century Platform to Better Serve the American People, and lastly, the Memorandum on Open Data Policy, Managing Information as an Asset, all to provide open communication. Data is expected to be public and shareable to allow the public to have access to information and understand in order to provide opinions. Another weakness is that this would be a third-party company with access to the farmer data, which causes a lot of confusion and mistrust with the owners and the rights of data from their farms. This is a big concern among the farmer community about data sharing and accepting technology onto their farms that brings restricting contracts with them. Lastly, for the Canadian perspective, existing regulations require a level of monitoring and compliance that may not be compatible with the capabilities of the 3D AI biosensor technology. Large producers in the poultry industry, for example, are required to conduct regulatory sampling and testing procedures for contamination in raw meat and chicken products. The company is mandated to carry out these procedures may not be drawn to technology that cannot be used to facilitate the testing process. While this may not entirely rule out larger poultry companies as a customer, it does indicate that targeting larger producers may not be the best interest of the sponsor. The shift at the federal level still leaves much to be desired. Both passed and stalled bills that provide stricter regulations and policies either lack in defining the space or focus on stricter regulations surrounding personal data. There's a lack of regulations safeguarding data at the business company level for Canadian farmers, poultry producers, and processors. What has the most impact is the effect U.S. regulations have on the U.S.-based third-party service. Recently, in April 2023, with the exception of passing of the Bill C-11, Canada has lacked a federal set of regulations surrounding data. Though similar, each province operated under their own set of guidelines, making it harder to do business across provinces. When using third-party services with AI components for data collection, poultry producers are left to their own devices to decide how to handle data collection. However, there is an intense push to regulate the industry.
Several opportunities exist across the US, Canada, and the UK on both the regulatory and data sides. In the US, no data regulations currently exist specifically concerning the use of AI biosensor technology in the poultry industry. The lack of restrictions may facilitate sale to farmers and the negotiation of data ownership contracts. If the sponsor's technology happens to fall under the government's patent for its bacteriophage-based electrochemical biosensor, though, then the question of data ownership is clear. While this would trigger data regulations tied to the use of the technology, it would also present a separate opportunity for the data to be used in furtherance of research and development within the industry. Partnering with the U.S.A. could help implement this technology and will provide resources to help develop the product. Medium-sized poultry production firms represent a particularly good opportunity for the sponsor's product. This is true across all three countries. In the U.S., the opportunity lies in the challenge these producers may face in meeting bird-by-bird tracking requirements. Several opportunities exist for marketing in Canada. The traceability feature of the Safe Food for Canadians regulations requires food businesses to trace food forward to the immediate customer and backward to the immediate supplier. While it's not clear what technology is already in place for companies to meet this requirement, A single biosensor system that collects and stores this data in a central location would be invaluable to food companies within the poultry industry. Next, the Pathogen Reduction Monitoring Program requires Safe Food for Canadians license holders who slaughter poultry or produce or process chicken parts to regularly sample and test their products for biological, chemical, and physical contaminants. While the sponsor's technology may not be applicable to this requirement, the mandate is only for companies that handle a certain volume of poultry. For a company that slaughters poultry, the threshold is more than 20,000 birds per year. The sponsor should therefore target smaller scale or medium-sized producers within the industry who are not bound by the PRMP, as they are likely not monitoring pathogens at the same level and also may not have the capacity or resources to conduct such sampling on a regular basis. The biosensors would therefore provide an additional level of monitoring and protection in place of testing. The CFC and the Public Health Agency of Canada are also committed to the removal of antimicrobial use on farms and have multiple programs dedicated to this mission, including the Canadian Integrated Program for Antimicrobial Resistance Surveillance, or CIPARS. An ongoing need exists for the gathering of antimicrobial data to monitor usage, presenting a clear case for the deployment of biosensors to support this mission. This may be in collaboration with the CFC and CIPARS, or it could be a selling point for customers seeking to reduce their antimicrobial use in accordance with the published guidance. On the data side, data policies and restrictions related to the private sector in Canada appear to primarily concern collection of personal rather than proprietary data. This may present both an opportunity and a threat. In terms of opportunity, the seeming lack of regulations surrounding proprietary data collection and artificial intelligence data systems should provide a good deal of flexibility in negotiating the sale and use of the technology. On the other hand, any future regulations to which the technology would be subject are currently unknown and may require changes after a system is already sold and in place. This will be explored more in the next slide. Finally, looking at the UK, like the US, this country requires medium and large-sized producers to track biological data points on a bird-by-bird basis, as well as maintain consistent records that can be accessed on request by state regulatory authorities. Biosensor technology placed at critical points in the poultry production process can, to a certain degree, revolutionize that process and reduce manpower required to maintain records by observing and registering data on a bird-by-bird basis. Medium-sized poultry production firms, again, represent a particularly good opportunity for the sponsor's product. These firms have sufficient volume to be subject to the stringent requirements of the UK laws, yet are unlikely to have processes that are set in stone. Additionally, these firms will likely be caught most off guard in relation to upcoming regulations and data trust requirements. Participation in data trusts will be valuable for these producers as a sign of goodwill, and biosensors will be critical to the registration for those.
For the threats portion of the SWOT analysis, the biosensor technology in question faces challenges in the United States as it is an emerging technology that will be newly introduced to the market. Medium to large poultry producers have been adjusting to standards for decades. The introduction of AI technology will face an already existing routine process that producers may not want to disrupt. There's also the issue of single versus multiple data points and finding the competitive edge in what information is tracked. Tracking a single data point will make for a stronger product in registering information and reducing the possibility of error. However, there is less of an emerging market for those single-purpose biosensor tools. There is value in tracking a variety of biodata. However, it provides a challenge in interface across a single bird. There is a difficulty to be noted in relation to scientific adaptation, though most of the threats presented are related to technology. On the data aspect, for the US, there is a potential threat to implementing this idea in the government's motives for accessing agricultural data. Issues and questions surrounding data ownership and who can have access to data can create trust breakdowns between farmers and the third-party service provider. Part of the threat assessment is the potential that the USDA currently owns patent rights on biosensors. Patent ownership currently, and for those that are going to be, pushed through in the near future, could create limitations on 3D AI biosensors. At this stage, it would require partnering with the United States government and, require submitting data for their research. The United States is working in additional laws and policies to address technology issues and to adapt for the growing world of technology. For the threats portion of the SWOT analysis, the biosensor technology in question faces challenges in the United States as it is an emerging technology that will be newly introduced to the market. Medium to large poultry producers have been adjusting to standards for decades. The introduction of AI technology will face an already existing routine process that producers may not want to disrupt. There's also the issue of single versus multiple data points and finding the competitive edge in what information is tracked. Tracking a single data point will make for a stronger product in registering information and reducing the possibility of error. However, there is less of an emerging market for those single-purpose biosensor tools. There is value in tracking a variety of biodata. However, it provides a challenge in interface across a single bird. There is a difficulty to be noted in relation to scientific adaptation, though most of the threats presented are related to technology. On the data aspect, for the US, there is a potential threat to implementing this idea in the government's motives for accessing agricultural data. Issues and questions surrounding data ownership and who can have access to data can create trust breakdowns between farmers, or I guess between farmers and the third-party service provider. Part of the threat assessment is the potential that the USDA currently owns patent rights on biosensors. Patent ownership currently, and for those that are going to be, pushed through in the near future, could create limitations on 3D AI biosensors. At this stage, it would require partnering with the United States government and, require submitting data for their research. The United States is working in additional laws and policies to address technology issues and to adapt for the growing world of technology. In Canada, according to CFC, the Chicken Farmers of Canada, an effective and responsive traceability system is already in effect. This is a system designed to identify the source of the pathogen outbreak within 24 hours. While next generation technology may present an opportunity to modernize or enhance the system, it may be difficult to break through into a market that already has a reliable and existing tracking system in place. Canadian data regulations and legislation is primarily focused on personal data and how companies use and distribute said data. Until recently, Canada lacked for regulations surrounding data use, storage, and distribution, leaving provinces on their own to create their own local regulations, though a lot of those regulations were very similar. The further development under AIDA, or ADA, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, may pose a challenge. ADA requires Canadian companies to have a risk mitigation process for identifying, assessing, controlling, and reviewing data. The intent of the proposed regulations is to build upon what exists and identify a clear set of common standards, language, and specifically legal action. However, nothing concrete exists at the moment. Further regulation would push for creating and implementing common requirements in relation to the development, design, and use of AI systems. Lastly, since the startup would operate as a third-party service provider and could use cloud-based systems to store data, it is highly likely that Canadian poultry producers and processors would be primarily concerned with US regulations surrounding specifically data rights. Overall, more research is required to identify the type of technology in use, possible gaps that can be filled by developing a 3D AI biosensor technology, and what kind of competitive edge the startup's technology would bring to the table. For the recommendations portion of our presentation, we put a high emphasis on prioritizing outreach to medium-sized producers in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Doing business across the US-Canadian border will be affected by US data regulations as they will be of concern to the Canadian companies surrounding data ownership concerns specifically. It is our recommendation that research is prioritized, specifically ongoing research, and consulting with lawyers specializing in data and privacy laws surrounding upcoming bills, language changes, and updated federal regulations in the US and Canada. In relation to the UK, there's a high emphasis on ESG investing across the country. There's a shift in demand for an increase in ESG focus, and it puts a high impact specifically on tech startups. It is to the benefit of companies to work in developing solutions specifically to the United Nations Development Goals. Early market entry here is critical to the success, with a golden timeline being identified as the next 2 to 3 years for market entry.